As the 2025 winter meetings come to a close, I can tell you right now, Chicago Cub fans have more questions than answers, and I'm going to try to break it all down for you right after this. Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Chicago Cubs Central, your number one spot for all things Chicago Cubs. I am your host, Mike Jones. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode. I appreciate it so much. You guys do not know how much it means to me that you guys take the time to watch these videos, to comment on these videos, to enjoy these videos. Thank you so very much. I promise to keep bringing you guys the very best I can in Chicago Cubs talk. With that being said, what the hell is going on, guys? I don't know about you, but the more John Heyman, the more that that the rest of the pundits and people started talking about what the Chicago Cubs did during the winter meetings, the more confused I got as far as what the heck, just what route the Chicago Cubs are going. The best thing I can tell you is that the Chicago Cubs are keeping their options open. That's a good thing. That's also a very unsettling thing. It's a very, very fine line they're going to be walking here throughout this winter meeting. I mean, well, the winter meetings are finished, but throughout this offseason. So the Chicago Cubs know what they need. They know what they have to do to get what they need. However, the Chicago Cubs have set limits on what they're trying to spend. We'll talk about some of that throughout this episode. But the Chicago Cubs walk a fine line, guys, trust me, with being on the cheaper side or unwilling to pay some of these pitchers or players in general what they are worth or what they feel they're worth or where their deals feel that they ought to be worth. So, with that being said, I have to say, first and foremost, guys, I really don't know why, but the Chicago Cubs and the Boston Red Sox also reportedly met Tuesday night in Orlando with Pete Alonso. Now, Pete Alonso plays first base, right? We have who I believe is one of the best first basemen in the National League. Michael Busch, dollar for dollar, I'd put him up against his production up against pretty much any other first baseman outside of a Freddie Freeman. And I would tell you that Michael Busch has outperformed his contract already just off of what he did last season. Definitely should have been in the Gold Glove conversation. He also hit over 30 bombs last year, led the team in home runs. And then not only that, but carried that over into the postseason. So why would the Chicago Cubs go after Pete Alonso? Well, in order to understand that, I think you have to flip back to Craig Counsell's interview that he did the day before during the winter meetings. Craig Counsell mentioned a lot about players being able to play multiple spots. Michael Busch isn't a natural first baseman. So you look at this and you say to yourself, adding somebody with the power and the slug of a Pete Alonso and putting him on the Chicago Cubs, he can DH for you. Pete Alonso can also play first base for you. But putting Pete Alonso in that DH spot gives you Seiya Suzuki over in right field and takes away him from DHing. So that allows Pete Alonso to DH some days, play first base some days. Michael Busch will sit some days. Seiya Suzuki will sit some days. It just kind of depends. But I look at this and I say to myself, the Chicago Cubs are keeping their options open. And as mad as I want to be, because Pete Alonso obviously didn't choose the Cubs, he chose the Orioles. This is a good sign that the Cubs are meeting with players like Pete Alonso. This is a good sign that they understand that they have to get better. That if you don't get Kyle Tucker back, that you have to find a way to get better, whether that be through trade or whether that be through signing someone else. Now, we'll talk about Kyle Tucker in another episode because what the readings that we're getting on Kyle Tucker and what everybody's saying that he's going to get offered, especially if he's the favorite to either sign with the Dodgers. He's also been spotted meeting with the Blue Jays in their camp. But when you look at this, you say to yourself, the Chicago Cubs obviously understand that, and this was always, I guess, my biggest fear, is that the Chicago Cubs were just going to rest solely on Owen Casey, Moises Ballesteros, and Matt Shaw to be the pieces to move forward. And granted, those guys could very well play a very big part in the Chicago Cubs this season. However, I still think that you need a proven bat. I did not like putting that pressure on those young guys. So the Chicago Cubs meeting with Pete Alonso, the Chicago Cubs doing the Zoom call with Alex Bregman, the Chicago Cubs doing all these different things lets me know that they understand that we have got to get better. And we cannot afford to go on the offensive droughts that we went on the year before. There's no reason that we should have lost the division last year. We had it in hand. We were 20 games up above 500, 10 games, at least 10 games up on Milwaukee. And we lost every bit of that. So I'm loving that I'm seeing that the Chicago Cubs are looking at starting pitching. The Chicago Cubs are looking to sign a big bat free agent. These are all the things that I've marked off my list. Reliever, big bat free agent, starting pitcher, especially now that Craig Counsell has already made it known Justin Steele was not going to be ready anytime soon when the season starts. So I'm very, very pleased that they did the meeting with Pete Alonso. Now, obviously, again, you swing, you miss. I can understand that. Pete Alonso being put with the Orioles, that organization is trying to rehab and redo things, and they're willing to pay that money for Pete Alonso. I don't know what the Chicago Cubs offer was for Pete or what it was rumored for Pete, but whatever the case may be, they took the meeting, they talked to him, they kind of sifted out what he was looking for and what he was wanting. And like I said, I mean, again, you cannot blame them for trying. I just want to see my organization try. Please try. Don't not take meetings. Don't not, meet with guys or talk with guys just because. So I am, for one, very, very, very excited that the Chicago Cubs understand that they need that they are needing to get better. Another missed opportunity for the Chicago Cubs that we have to point out is the fact that apparently, according to Bruce Levine, Chicago Cubs insider, Devin Williams reportedly preferred to sign with the Chicago Cubs over the Mets. But the Cubs offer didn't get to the $51 million mark that Williams eventually got. So in my eyes, I look at this and I say to myself, that part's alarming because I understand that the Chicago Cubs, and one word that Jed Hoyer uses often is value. Value. We got to find value in different players or different pieces. We got to find value. And he tries to, quote unquote, spend Ricketts' money smart. That's why he got another contract. That's why he's going to be here for a very, very long time with the Chicago Cubs at the helm. So he's all about finding value. And I guess Devin Williams wanted to come and pitch for his old former manager, Craig Counsell. However, it was one of those situations where the Cubs were unwilling to meet Devin Williams, where the Mets were willing to meet Devin Williams, which this literally shook up the whole the whole National Division, just because the Mets had a really bad 2 days. Had the Cubs met that $51 million mark, Edwin Diaz would probably still be a Met right now because they wouldn't have had Devin Williams. Reportedly, Edwin Diaz chose to go with the Dodgers because the Mets never called him or never let him know that they were considering signing Devin Williams to a contract. So the Chicago Cubs signing Devin Williams, he never goes in, he's never a Met. Edwin Diaz stays off the Dodgers, probably stays with the Mets, gets some type of huge offer. And boom, there we are. So the ripple effect of this is felt all throughout the league. And we have to understand that the Chicago Cubs name is going to be mentioned more and more. This is just the beginning, guys. This is just the beginning. Until there is not a single free agent left, the Chicago Cubs name will be mentioned with most of these teams. And that's because The Chicago Cubs have money to spend. And again, it's alarming because they wouldn't spend the money to go get somebody like Devin Williams. Now, they are still looking for a high-end relief pitcher. That's still the rumor that's out there. But I really don't know if they're going to be able to get that. That's the question. The Chicago Cubs, coincidentally, are also being linked once again to the Washington Nationals and MacKenzie Gore. Apparently, the Chicago Cubs have been in talks with the Nationals and could be trying to make that deal. Now, I want to ask you guys this question. This is the question of the day for this episode. I want you guys to comment on it. Let me know your thoughts. Would you be happy if the Cubs this offseason did the following 3 things? This doesn't come from me. This comes from Sleeper Cubs. So I'm not trying to steal their stuff. Don't mind nobody hop in my comments. I'll follow Sleeper Cubs on X. They said, if you trade Matt Shaw for MacKenzie Gore, if you sign Amai, and if you sign Alex Bregman, would you be happy? Would you consider that offseason a success? Now, obviously, you still got to get your bullpen right and everything like that. But those are 3 major pieces that you add. You add 2 great starting pitchers, and you add a great big bat to put in between Seiya Suzuki and Michael Busch. I like it. I think that would suffice as an A+ offseason, especially if you were able to get some value out of that. Now, it all remains to be seen if the Chicago Cubs are going to be able to accomplish this. But I still do have faith in the club. I do think that we are going to get somebody, guys. I understand that patience is waning. Everybody's tired of waiting and hoping for the probables. But I'm telling you guys, I truly believe the Chicago Cubs are going to make some more moves. And I do think that they're going to be big moves. I do not think that they're going to be these small itty-bitty moves that people come on and they talk about or downplay or say that they don't mean anything. The Chicago Cubs, we got to remember, the best sneakiest move, 2 sneakiest moves the Chicago Cubs did last year was getting Caleb Thielbar and getting Brad Keller. I know everybody wants to talk about trading for Tucker and how big that was for the Cubs. But to me, in my eyes, those 2 moves right there solidified your bullpen, and those 2 guys carried you through the whole second half of the season. So don't downplay the small moves the Chicago Cubs made either. They're making upgrades to the bullpen that are going to be sneaky good. You got to pay attention to it all, man. But let me know you guys' thought on that question. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in to this episode. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. And like I said, I appreciate you guys. We'll be back again tomorrow with some more. Until then, go Cubs, go.
Thank you for watching another episode of Chicago Cubs Central, the #1 spot for all Chicago Cubs content. Remember to like, share, subscribe for more Cubs content.